Hi, welcome back to the next recording. For those of you who've not listened to any of the previous ones, my name is Anna-May Coetzee and I'm the owner of a company called Accelerated Excellence and True Awakenings NLP Coaching and Training Center. So we spoke in the previous recording about the incredible nervous system that we have, and that there's approximately 11 million bits of information that comes through your senses and that's being processed through your nervous system. And around 50 bits of that we become consciously aware of, and that condensing of information takes about half a second to reduce that volume of vast information down to the 50 bits that we actually consciously become aware of and get to process. Yes, okay, so mentioned in that recording also something called a reticular activating system, and for the first time, the first time I heard that word, I thought someone was swearing at me, but it's referred to as the RAS. And it's really just think of it as the gatekeeper between the information that comes through and how that process is taking place. So it's really a pencil-shaped piece of the brain that filters all that information through to us into our conscious awareness. So I want to show you a little picture quickly, just to point out to you that little piece over there is what your reticular activating system looks like. So it acts as a filter. So from our ears and from our eyes, the information comes through, and then it sends all the important information through to the rest of the brain. So that's the reticular activating system. And well, the good news is you don't have to build an engine of a car to be able to drive a car. So you don't have to be a brain surgeon either to understand the basics of how the brain works and just how to make it work for you. So I'm going to just give you what's important about this and what's the function of the RAS and how to become aware of what's in the filtering system, which we'll break down in the next recording, is your own personal filters. So becoming aware of that is going to show you some evidence of what's causing all the results in your life currently and what can we focus on so that the RAS starts filtering different information, and so that the 50 bits that you land up with becomes very focused towards what you want instead of what you don't want. Okay, so good news, we don't have to be brain surgeons to make a difference. We just need to learn how to take control of the steering so that we can direct it to where we want to go. So I want you to have a look at this picture here quickly. Okay, so what this represents is the outside events that happen in your environment gets filtered through your senses, the 11 million bits per second, and it goes through three major filters. It deletes and distorts and generalizes information down. That's how we land up with the 50 bits of information that we consciously become aware of. This is what we refer to as an internal representation. So internally, we begin to represent that external event in a certain way. So for example, if you were to win the lottery, you will label that and internalize it in a certain way. Your internal representation and your physiology will affect your internal state. Your internal state is how you feel, right? So your personal filters, part of them is values and beliefs, will influence your thinking, which we will break down more around the power of your thoughts, conscious and unconscious. There's around 50 to 80,000 of them running through your mind every single day, and they affect the choice of the 50 billion that we land up with. So we're going to talk about that, how the combination of the physiology and the internal representation affects your internal state, so how you feel. So if you're watching everything that's happening on the news right now and you are paying attention to, and I mean this with love, if you're paying attention to everything that just produces more fear, if you're feeling an internal state of fear, what behavior is that going to cause you to have, and what results will you create in your life as a result of that? So this is again why I spoke yesterday about what is so important in your environment as you process that information, because it creates this internal representation for you. This then becomes what influences how you feel and your physiology and how you behave, and therefore your results. Right, so the reticular activating system is really just a filtering process, and every internal representation is literally just how we internalize that and the way that we describe it to ourselves and the meanings that we give to that. And we can look at the situation and say this is a difficult situation, or we can look at it and say this is an opportunity for us. I had someone send me a message this morning and said, you know, the world's falling apart, and you know, and he's in chaos and he's stuck. And I said, yes, you could choose to look at it that way, and that's okay if it serves you, or you can look at this as a great opportunity. And he said, an opportunity to do what? I said, well, perhaps we can learn from this and take greater care of our health going forward. So we can look at results that we've created in the past and see if there's something there that I didn't like. So if there's any part of my health that was compromised, what can I do differently in terms of my environment? How do I affect my environment so that the information that I get exposed to will actually start feeding my values and beliefs in a certain way, so that I can think about it differently, feel about it differently, and behave about it differently, and ultimately influence my results differently. So what about my health could I do differently in order? So if I was a little bit nervous with a sudden scare, like we're all carrying a lot of stress. Gone are the days where you go to the doctor and the doctor says, what's really going on here? You've got flu-like symptoms, and they actually treat your symptoms as clues to find what the root cause of the problem is, and then send you home and said, you're actually under too much pressure and you're stressing too much, and please can you just go take a week's holiday? Wouldn't that be nice if my doctor would just book me off for a week for a holiday? Just to de-stress, right? So now, if you have found yourself carrying a lot of stress prior to this 21-day opportunity to reboot, then you can have a look and say, okay, how do I change that going out in the future? How do I make sure that my body doesn't endure that much stress? Because having that amount of stress affects my health, and my immune system is lowered and weakened and compromised. And I would say more than 80% of people that land up in the doctor's room, the cause of that ailment that they're sitting there with is something that stems from stress. So what can I learn from that? You know, and how do I adjust differently in order for me to keep my body in a much healthier position? So that's the feedback that I can take from that. That's an existing result that I need to, you know, so should anything like this happen ever again, you know, hypothetically speaking, that at least my health box is checked, you know, at least I know that I wouldn't have to induce any form of internal fear. Now, if I'm aware of my internal fear being there, or feeling anxious all the time, and I know that my health is compromised, then all of a sudden this little voice in my head's going to say, oh, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a little bit, I shouldn't go outside because, you know, I'm not the healthiest. And so maybe I'll be susceptible to getting sick and those type of things. So, you know, the flu is not cured, and it's always around. And the question is, why is some people getting sick from it and others are not? And it really is just because your immune system is lowered and your guard's down, and therefore your body can't fight it off, especially if it's enduring too much stress. So the reticular activating system, again, like I spoke in the previous recording, is like Google, right? What we are focusing on and what we are allowing ourselves to experience in our environment is going to come through this simple filtering process. And the 50 bits that you land up with is going to represent what you already have in your own personal filters, which I'm going to discuss in the next recording, how your own personal filters is the cause of what chooses the 50 bits that you land up with, and where they come from, and what you can do by changing them. Is looking at those filters first and seeing if they work for you or not. And if they don't, then how do we change them, right? So first we need to understand that the reticular activation system is simply like a ask and you receive process. If this is what I'm focusing on, then the information that's outside, the 11 million that's coming through my nervous system, I'm going to get a slice of what I'm focusing on. So I'm going to put a clip in the comments section or in the post with this recording called the double slit exercise or experiment, which is a mind-blowing exercise that they did in quantum physics. And really they took particles, which is tiny pieces of matter, and they shot it through a flat sheet with one slit in it, and I wanted to notice what behavior the particles created. And it created one line on the back screen. They then cut two slits, and it created two lines, which is fine. This is what they expected. And then they put the slit with the two lines in water, and as a wave pushes through the water and comes through those two slits, it creates multiple little waves on the other side, because it actually cuts the wave and interferes with it. So on the other side of the slit, the waves actually start interfering with themselves, so creating multiple lines at the back of the screen, which the little clip is about a 3 to 5 minute clip, if I recall correctly. We'll describe for you in much greater detail. I'm just really going through it short and quick. And the summary of that whole exercise was that the tiny little electrons, which is tiny pieces of matter or like tiny pieces of marbles, when they did it on a quantum, which really means very, very small, quantum level, they found that the tiny pieces of electrons or matter, which is seemingly solid, created the same interference pattern on the back screen as what the waves did when they interfered with themselves. And what that tells us is, simply put, is that all of these possibilities exist simultaneously. And So that means that everything that is something that you conceive in your mind, any goal that you can think of, the possibility of it exists. We just need to find ourselves aligned to that possibility to have it created in our reality, in our experience. And the way that you align with that is by cleaning up your filters in your RAS. So this is what the RAS is about. I'm doing a short film. I'm doing longer recordings. Takes a long time to upload for you. And the day before, it took me I actually had to do it at 4 o'clock this morning when the internet was slow, and I was hoping everybody was sleeping while I was feeding babies so that I could get it up for you. So I'm going to do shorter little videos going forward just to get it to you quicker. Okay, so that's the importance of the reticular activating system. It really is a gatekeeper that uses this filtering system of your mind to bring to your conscious awareness that which you focus on, consciously and unconsciously. So with the processing speed of the unconscious being 160,000 kilometers per second, as I mentioned in the previous recording, that process is happening so incredibly fast that we're unaware of our own filters and how they influence this. So in the next recording, I want to talk about what those filters are and how you can become aware of them and what you can do to change them and the influence that they have on such a subtle level of your internal state. Because really, if I go back to this little picture for you, ultimately, if you look at the results that you want to create, they come from how you behave. Now, most people try and change their behavior. Now, this is I'm setting a new goal and I work at it consciously every day, and 3 weeks later, I'm back to my old habits, because you are only trying to change the behavior. You've done nothing in changing all of this. Now, if you start in the beginning process and you change what this means to you and how you think about it, and it causes you to feel a different way, then the behavior becomes very automatic, and so for the results. I'll give you an example. I worked with a client and he came for a specific problem that was in his personal life, and we worked on cleaning up what I call his internal filters. We purged the filters, right? So it cleaned up his thinking, his unconscious patterns, and he felt very, very differently. But now, although he worked in his personal capacity, your brain goes everywhere with you. Everywhere you go, there you are, right? So even in your career, or if you have your own business, your perception of self will project into your business. So your behaviors in your business and your result in your business is a result of how you think about yourself and your business and your life. So when we got to set his goals, now we saw each other once a week for an hour. This was about 7 years ago. And over his specific program was around 4 months. And the goal setting, so the actual behaviors, what we're going to do differently, we focus on at the end of that exercise, because if I don't turn this critic into a cheerleader, then it's going to make it really difficult for you to take the steps that you need to take to get to your outcomes. So we did this work first by cleaning all of this up and creating the feeling that was needed. And it took me weeks to pin him down to actually just do the goals exercise. The storage of his business went from 18 square meters to 100 square meters in 3 months, and we did not work in the context of his business. We worked in his personal life. So his behavior automatically started changing, and his environment started changing, and his RAS started filtering totally differently. His results dramatically improved in 3 months, and we had not even set one goal. Okay, so if you find yourself not having the motivation or procrastinating, those beautiful things that we do, there's reasons for them. And let's go and understand what they could be, and just know that the RAS is working with you, not against you. It's what we install into those filters that causes the RAS to attract the experiences that you are. When you think of wanting to buy a new car, or wanting to go on a holiday, or whatever the case might be, or you're thinking about studying a specific subject, all of a sudden you'll see that car all over the roads. Wherever you go, your favorite car, there it shows up. Or if you want to study something, all of a sudden you'll start seeing ads on the TV advertising that specific type of study. And then you think, I thought I was going to buy a unique car. Now the thing is all over the place. That's your RAS. Okay, so because you're thinking about it, you're focusing about it, your mind goes, I don't know if it's good or bad for you, but it seems to be important. Out of the 11 million bits, this is what you focus on all the time. Consciously, let me make you aware. Here's the 50 that matches your focus. Okay, so yesterday, or in the previous recording, I said to you, please go and think about what it is that you want, because you want to use it as a theme through all these little recordings as a process of working on something that would make the most significant change in your life right now where you are. There's always going to be more to work on, but let's start with the one that's going to make a big change for you. And then we can focus on what is in the existing filters that stops you and hinders you, and what's running in the unconscious that affects your internal state. that causes your behavior to become something that we will call procrastination. Now, we only procrastinate because there's either something that we are fearing or that it's not important enough. And not important enough doesn't mean that it's not important, but maybe there's other things that's more important. So we'll look at those internal filters and how your filters are created and where they come from and how to pay attention to them, right? So again, so just notice what is important to you and don't pay attention to that critic in the head that tells you why you can't have what you want. Those are just all the beliefs that's been installed. We're going to address them. But for now, just again, focus on what it is you want and get as clear as what you can so that and think of it all the time, so your mind doesn't know the difference between imagined and real. So when you think about having your ideal life, let's say it's health and you want to lose weight and you want to lose 5Ks or whatever it might be, for you to know that that's real, you're going to perhaps have to see the result in the mirror or get on the scale and see the numbers, right? So when I focus on that attention and when I focus on the outcome of what would I look like when I'm there, my mind starts attracting all the information that would match that. If I think about where I am, it's going to match that because that's where my focus is. So again, when you think you can or you can't, you'll be right. And so the thought is the beginning. It's the electrical current in the brain that runs in those impulses that attracts the information that comes through the reticular activation system that is being delivered into the brain and getting into your conscious awareness so that the 50 bits that gets your attention is a match to what you are focusing on. Okay, so that's one of the filters, and we're going to talk about the rest more. So I hope you enjoyed the introduction to your RAS. And how powerful that is, and that the 50 bits that we land up with is pretty important. So hang on to the next recording and I will explain to you and we'll get into more detail about your own unique personal filters, what they are, and we will take each one of them, break them down, where they come from, what influences them, and how to change them. Okay, so sending you much love as always and see you on the other side of this recording.